The whole diner laughed when the waitress defended a limping elderly woman from cruel rich college kids. She stood alone, mocked, dismissed. What she didn't know, that elderly woman was the Mafia boss's mother. And he never forgot those who showed his family kindness. The lunch rush at Betty's diner hit like a freight train at 12:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and Mara-chan was already running on fumes. Her feet ached in her worn sneakers. Coffee stains decorated her apron like abstract art. Table 6 needed refills, Table 9 was snapping fingers at her, and the kitchen was backed up because Jerry had burned another batch of fries. Just another day in downtown Chicago, serving overpriced burgers to underpaying customers. Then the door chimed. An elderly woman shuffled in, her cane tapping against the black and white checkered floor. She was maybe 75, with silver hair pulled into a neat bun and a navy dress that had seen better decades. But it was her walk that caught everyone's attention, a pronounced limp that made each step look painful, like her left hip had given up on her years ago. The diner fell into that particular kind of silence that precedes cruelty. Oh my God, a voice cut through the noise.
Loud.
Deliberate. Did someone let their grandma escape the nursing home? Laughter erupted from the corner booth. Mara's stomach dropped. She knew those kids. Well, not knew them, but recognized the type. 5 college students who'd been camping in that booth for an hour, nursing 2 coffees between them while their designer bags took up extra chairs. The kind who treated service workers like furniture. The guy who'd spoken, blonde, square-jawed, wearing a polo shirt that probably cost more than Mara's rent, nudged his girlfriend. Babe, are you seeing this? Someone's grandma is literally breaking down in public. Tyler, stop, the girlfriend giggled, not meaning it at all. She was already pulling out her phone. The elderly woman's face remained composed, but Mara saw something flicker in her dark eyes. Not embarrassment, something harder. Pride, maybe being ground down by shame. Excuse me, ma'am, the hostess, Rachel, barely looked up from her podium. We're pretty full right now. Maybe you could try. There's a seat at the counter, Mara interrupted, surprising herself. Rachel shot her a look. Mara, your section's full. I can't. Then she can have my break table. Mara was already moving, abandoning her coffee pot on table 6's edge. She reached the woman and offered her arm. Let me help you, ma'am. The woman studied her for a moment. Up close, Mara noticed her makeup was flawless, her earrings real gold. This wasn't someone who couldn't afford better treatment. This was someone the world had decided to discard anyway. Thank you, dear, the woman said softly, her accent carrying a trace of Italian. You're very kind. Oh, this is precious, Tyler announced to his table, loud enough for the entire diner. The waitress found her soulmate. 2 losers helping each other. His friends howled. Mara felt every eye in the diner turn toward her. Tyler DeLuca, you're a real class act, Mara called back, her cheeks burning. And you're a real nobody, Tyler shot back. My father owns half the city. What do you own? An apartment with roaches. More laughter. Even other customers were smirking now, and Mara caught the manager, Paul, watching from the kitchen window with his arms crossed. No help coming from that direction. Come on, Mara murmured to the elderly woman. Let's get you comfortable. She guided her to a quiet 2-top near the window, away from Tyler's crew. The woman settled into the chair with visible relief, her cane propped against the table. They're children, the woman said calmly, as if discussing the weather. Children who've never been told no. They're assholes, Mara corrected, then winced.
Sorry, ma'am.
That was accurate. The woman's lips curved into the smallest smile. And please, call me Rosa.
Mara.
Can I get you some water? Coffee. Coffee would be lovely. Black, no sugar. As Mara headed to the coffee station, she passed Tyler's table. The girlfriend was holding up her phone, clearly recording, while Tyler provided commentary. And here we see the rare Chicago charity case, serving her fellow charity case. Beautiful. David Attenborough would be proud. You should be embarrassed, Mara said, pouring coffee with shaking hands. You should learn your place, Tyler replied. People like you exist to serve people like me. That's how the world works. My family's been running this city since before your parents immigrated here, sweetheart. The Chinese last name. Of course he'd noticed. Of course he'd go there. Mara set down the coffee pot harder than necessary. My family's been here 4 generations, Tyler. And we actually work for what we have. Oh, you work, Tyler leaned back, grinning. What's minimum wage these days? $8 an hour? I spend more than that on coffee, every morning. Good for you. Mara grabbed Rosa's coffee and walked away, ignoring the laughter that followed. When she set the cup down, Rosa was watching her with an unreadable expression. You didn't have to do that, Rosa said quietly. Yes, I did. Mara pulled out her order pad, trying to calm her racing heart. Nobody deserves to be treated like that. Most people would have looked away. Most people suck. Rosa laughed, a real laugh, warm and genuine. Yes, they do. But not you, I think. I just serve coffee, ma'am. You serve dignity, Rosa corrected. That's much rarer. Behind them, Tyler's table erupted in fresh laughter. Someone said viral video, and someone else said, this is gold. Mara didn't look back. She took Rosa's order, tomato soup and grilled cheese, and headed to the kitchen, where Paul was waiting. You just made a scene in my diner, he said flatly. They made the scene. I just served a customer. The DeLucas spend money here. Paul gestured at Rosa, orders soup. Then maybe you're serving the wrong customers. Paul's jaw tightened. Keep your politics out of my diner, Mara. One more stunt like that and you're out. Mara bit back her response and clipped the order to the line. Through the window, she watched Rosa sip her coffee, gazing out at the Chicago street with the bearing of someone who'd survived worse than a bunch of spoiled kids. What Mara didn't know, what nobody in that diner knew, was that Rosa Russo had survived much worse indeed. And her son didn't forget those who showed her kindness, or those who showed her cruelty. The morning shift started the way it always did, quietly, before the city fully woke up. Mara arrived at 6 a.m. to find Paul already inside, counting register bills with his usual scowl. The early crowd trickled in, construction workers needing coffee, nurses ending night shifts, a few insomniacs seeking pancakes and silence. Nobody mentioned yesterday. Nobody mentioned Tyler DeLuca's video, though Mara had seen it making rounds on social media last night. Over 2,000 views already, with comments like Karen Waitress versus broke grandma and poor people defending poor people is hilarious. She deleted Instagram after that. Table 4 needs water. Paul barked, not looking at her. Mara grabbed a pitcher and got to work. Wednesday mornings were usually peaceful, giving her time to think, to breathe.
She needed that today.
Her rent was due in 3 days, and she was $40 short. Maybe she could pick up an extra shift at the hotel where she cleaned rooms on weekends, or... The rumble of engines cut through her thoughts. It wasn't normal traffic. This was deeper, synchronized, the kind of sound that made your spine straighten instinctively. Mara glanced out the window and felt her breath catch. 4 black SUVs were pulling up to the curb, one after another, parking in a no-parking zone like laws didn't apply to them. The vehicles were identical, glossy, tinted windows, chrome gleaming in the early light. What the hell? Paul muttered, moving to the window. The first SUV's doors opened. 2 men stepped out, both wearing dark suits that fit too well to be off the rack. They weren't large, but they moved with the kind of economy that suggested violence was always an option. One scanned the street while the other opened the rear door of the second SUV. The man who emerged made Mara's stomach drop. He was maybe 50, with salt and pepper hair slicked back, a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car, and an air of absolute authority. His face was handsome in a weathered way, strong jaw, Roman nose, dark eyes that missed nothing. A thin scar traced his left eyebrow, the only flaw in an otherwise composed appearance. Oh, Jesus, Paul whispered. That's Antonio Russo. Mara's blood went cold. Everyone in Chicago knew that name, even if they pretended not to. Antonio Russo ran the South Side, controlled the unions, owned businesses from restaurants to construction companies. The newspapers called him a legitimate businessman. The streets called him something else entirely. And he was walking toward Betty's diner. 4 more men followed him out, forming a loose perimeter. They weren't obviously armed, but Mara would have bet her last dollar they were. The group moved toward the entrance with the confidence of people who owned whatever space they occupied. "Paul, what do we do?" Rachel hissed from a hostess stand. "Nothing. Just act normal. Serve them like anyone else."
The door chimed.
6 men entered, and the diner's usual morning sounds, clinking silverware, quiet conversations, died instantly. Antonio Russo stood in the doorway, surveying the space like a general surveying a battlefield. His gaze swept over Paul, over Rachel, over the gawking customers, and landed on Mara. His expression softened. "Good morning," he said, his voice smooth and cultured. "I'm looking for Mara Chen." Every head swiveled toward her. Mara felt like she'd been dunked in ice water. That's me," she managed, her voice barely steady. Antonio crossed the diner in 5 strides, his men fanning out behind him. He stopped in front of her, and up close, Mara realized he was even more intimidating. Not because of his size, but because of his presence, the weight of power that clung to him like cologne. "Miss Chen," he said, extending his hand. "Antonio Russo. I believe you served my mother yesterday." The diner went so quiet Mara could hear her own heartbeat.
"Your
mother?" The pieces clicked together. Rosa, the elderly woman. The accent, the bearing, the way she'd handled Tyler's mockery like it was beneath her notice. Antonio's handshake was firm, but not aggressive. "Rosa Russo. She came home yesterday and told me about a young woman who showed her kindness when others showed her cruelty." She needed a seat," Mara stammered. "You defended her," Antonio corrected. "You risked your job, accepted mockery, and treated her with dignity. That's not just anything, Miss Chen." He released her hand and turned to address the entire diner, his voice carrying easily. "My mother is 76 years old. She survived the war, survived coming to this country with nothing, survived raising 3 sons in a neighborhood where we had to fight for every inch of respect." His eyes hardened. "Yesterday, some punk kids mocked her disability, posted it online for entertainment." Mara saw Paul's face drain of color. "But this young woman," Antonio continued, gesturing to Mara, "stood up for a stranger. Didn't ask for anything. Didn't expect anything. Just did what was right." He reached into his jacket, several customers flinched, and pulled out a white envelope. He handed it to Mara. "This is a small token of our family's gratitude. Mr. Russo, I can't." "You can," he said gently. "And you will. My mother insists." Mara opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a check for $5,000. Her knees nearly gave out. This is too much." "It's not nearly enough." Antonio's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Now, may I have a table in your section? My associates and I would like breakfast." Mara nodded numbly, grabbing menus. As she led them to the largest booth, she caught Paul's expression, equal parts terror and calculation. Rachel looked like she might faint. Antonio and his men ordered simply coffee, eggs, toast. They ate quietly, professionally, while the rest of the diner pretended not to stare. When they finished, Antonio left a $100 tip on a $40 check. "We'll be seeing you, Miss Chen," he said at the door. "Take care of yourself." The SUVs pulled away as smoothly as they'd arrived. Mara stood holding the check, her hands trembling, aware that something fundamental had just shifted in her life. That night, Paul received a visit from a lawyer named Vincent Calabrese. The conversation lasted 20 minutes. When it ended, Betty's Diner had a new silent owner, and Paul had a new understanding of exactly who Mara Chen had befriended. Some kindnesses, it turned out, carried weight in unexpected places. Tyler DeLuca's Instagram story went live at 9:47 p.m. on Wednesday night, 3 hours after Antonio Russo had left Betty's diner. The video opened with a shaky pan across the diner, Tyler's voice narrating. "So, we're at the stump for lunch, right? And check out what walks in." The camera focused on Rosa, her limp exaggerated by the angle. Someone off-screen laughed. "Literally looks like a broken NPC from a video game," Tyler continued. But wait, it gets better. The footage cut to Mara helping Rosa to the table, her face flushed, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "And here comes the hero nobody asked for," Tyler mocked. "Some random waitress acting like she's saving the world by helping Limping Linda here. Like, girl, you serve coffee. Calm down." His girlfriend Brittany's voice chimed in. "She's so mad right now. She should be mad at her life choices," Tyler replied. The video showed him confronting Mara, her face tight with anger, his friends howling with laughter in the background. The caption read, "When broke people defend broke people face with tears of joy skull #service industry heroes #delusional waitress #Chicago life." By midnight, the video had 15,000 views. By Thursday morning, it was at 43,000. The comments section was a cesspool of cruelty disguised as humor. "Why is the waitress acting like she's in a movie? Girl, you're in a diner. Old lady probably doesn't even have insurance for that hip LMAO. The waitress really thought she did something skull." Tyler DeLuca is a legend for this. Poor people are so dramatic about everything. Mara discovered the video when her coworker Jenny showed her during their Thursday morning break. "I'm so sorry," Jenny said, her face apologetic. "But you should probably know. It's everywhere." Mara watched it twice, her coffee going cold in her hands. Each replay felt like a slap. The way they'd edited it made her look crazy, overly aggressive, unnecessarily defensive. They'd cut out Tyler's worst comments, made it seem like she'd just randomly attacked customers. 43,000 people, she whispered. "Don't read the comments," Jenny warned. Mara read them anyway. Each one felt like a tiny knife, death by 1,000 cuts. She tried to do the right thing, and now she was a punchline for teenagers who'd never worked a day in their lives. "Hey," Jenny squeezed her shoulder. "Those people don't know you. They don't matter." But they did matter. Because those people were everywhere. The customers who'd sneer at her now, the friends who'd send her the video with laughing emojis, the strangers who'd recognize her face and judge her. Mara deleted the Instagram app from her phone and went back to work. What she didn't know was that the video had reached other eyes as well. Vincent Calabrese was 62 years old and had been Antonio Russo's consigliere for 37 of them. He'd started as a street kid running numbers, proved himself smart and loyal, and risen to become the architect of Antonio's legitimate business empire. He prided himself on knowing everything that happened in their sphere of influence. Which is why, when his nephew Marco sent him a link Thursday morning with the message, "Isn't this the lady Mr. Russo mentioned?" Vincent watched the video 3 times. Then he made a phone call. "We have a problem," he told Antonio. 20 minutes later, Vincent sat in Antonio's office, a converted warehouse space in Bridgeport with brick walls, expensive art, and soundproofing that made it one of the most private places in Chicago. Antonio watched the video on Vincent's tablet, his expression unreadable. When it finished, he watched it again, then a third time. "Tyler DeLuca," he said finally. "Son of Marcus DeLuca, the real estate developer." "I know who Marcus DeLuca is." Antonio's voice was quiet, which Vincent knew was more dangerous than anger. "He's been trying to muscle into our South Side contracts for 2 years. City council in his pocket, union connections through his wife's family. Strong family," Vincent acknowledged. "Politically connected. The mayor owes him favors." Antonio set down the tablet. "My mother is in this video." Yes. Being mocked. Humiliated. By Marcus DeLuca's son. Vincent waited. He'd learned long ago that Antonio thought best in silence. "And Miss Chun," Antonio continued, The woman who defended my mother is now being publicly humiliated across the internet. 43,000 people laughing at her kindness. The video's still climbing. Could hit 100,000 by tonight. Antonio stood and walked to his window, overlooking the Chicago skyline. The morning sun caught the steel buildings, making them gleam like knives. What do we know about the DeLuca family business? Vincent had anticipated this question. He pulled out a file folder. Yes, he still used paper for sensitive information, and opened it on Antonio's desk. DeLuca Development Corporation. 3 major projects currently in motion: the River North Apartment Complex, the South Loop Retail Center, and the Pilsen Renovation Project. That one's controversial, displacing a lot of families. Financing. Over-leveraged. They're using the River North pre-sales to fund the South Loop construction. Standard developer practice, but risky. One project fails, they all fail. Permits. All approved, but barely. They cut corners with the zoning board, probably some bribes involved. Nothing prosecutable, but ethically questionable. Antonio smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Vincent, I want you to collect every copy of this video you can find. Archive everything. The original, the shares, the comments. Document it all. Consider it done. And then, Antonio continued, his voice soft as silk, I want you to find every weak point in the DeLuca empire. Every delayed payment, every unhappy subcontractor, every corner they've cut. I want to know where they're vulnerable. You want to squeeze them. I want to educate them, Antonio corrected. The DeLuca boy needs to learn that actions have consequences. And his father needs to learn that some people in this city still have standards. Vincent nodded, already mentally compiling lists of contacts, favors owed, pressure points. One more thing, Antonio added. Make sure Miss Chin doesn't see any more cruelty from this. If anyone at that diner gives her trouble, I want to know about it. I'll have someone watching. As Vincent left, Antonio returned to the window. Somewhere out there, Tyler DeLuca was probably laughing with his friends, thinking himself untouchable. He was about to learn differently. Some people, Antonio thought, confused privilege with power. They were about to receive an education in the difference. Friday morning, Mara's apartment door didn't stick. She'd lived in the Pilsen walk-up for 3 years, and every single day the door had required a specific combination of lifting, pushing, and hip-checking to open. The super had promised to fix it approximately 17 times, and had fixed it exactly 0 times. But today, it swung open smoothly. The hinges even looked freshly oiled. Mara stood in the hallway, groceries in one hand, keys in the other, staring at the door like it had performed magic. Did Luis finally fix this? She called to her neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, who was retrieving her mail. Fix what, honey? My door.
It's
working. Mrs. Kowalski squinted at it.
Huh.
Maybe he finally got off his lazy behind. Miracle of miracles. But when Mara asked Luis later, he looked confused. Your door? Nobody called me about your door. Strange, but Mara had bigger concerns. Like the fact that she still felt exposed every time she left the apartment, worried someone would recognize her from Tyler's video. Like the fact that Paul had been watching her with an odd expression all week, not hostile, but cautious, like she was a grenade with an unpredictable pin. Saturday brought another oddity. Mara came home from her hotel cleaning shift, 4 hours of scrubbing toilets and changing sheets, to find 3 bags of groceries outside her door. Nice groceries, fresh vegetables, real butter, coffee that didn't come in a plastic tub, even a container of strawberries that looked like they'd cost more than her hourly wage. No note. No delivery receipt. Just groceries. She knocked on Mrs. Kowalski's door. Did you see who left these? What groceries? These, Mara pointed. Mrs. Kowalski peered at them. Some delivery guy, maybe? Young man, nice suit. Didn't say nothing to me. What delivery service sends guys in suits? Mrs. Kowalski shrugged. Rich people delivery? I don't know, honey. You got a secret admirer or something? Mara carried the bags inside, her mind spinning. The check from Antonio Russo was still sitting on her dresser, uncashed. She'd been too nervous to deposit it, convinced there was some catch, some strings attached. Was this related? But why would Antonio Russo send her groceries? Unless he felt responsible for the video's spread. Unless this was some kind of protection. The thought should have been comforting. Instead, it made her deeply uneasy. Sunday afternoon, she found a bouquet on her doorstep. Not gas station flowers. These were real, professionally arranged. White roses, lavender, eucalyptus. The kind of arrangement that cost $100 easy, wrapped in brown paper with a cream ribbon. No card.
No signature.
Just flowers that smelled like expensive weddings. Mara brought them inside and set them on her kitchen table, where they looked absurdly elegant next to her thrift store chairs and chipped mugs. Her phone buzzed. Jenny from the diner. Girl, did you see Tyler took down the video? Mara's heart jumped. She reinstalled Instagram with shaking hands. Tyler's story was gone. Completely scrubbed. The post that had been shared thousands of times had vanished like it never existed. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. Mara sat down hard on her couch, tears pricking her eyes. Maybe it was over. Maybe Tyler had gotten bored, or his parents had made him delete it, or...
Her phone buzzed again.
A text from an unknown number. You're safe. Someone's watching over you. Mara stared at the message, her relief curdling into something more complex. This wasn't random. This was orchestrated. She thought about the door, the groceries, the flowers, the video disappearing.
Antonio Russo.
It had to be. While Mara was discovering flowers, Antonio was discovering leverage. Vincent's report covered 12 pages, but the important parts could be summarized in 3 sentences. The DeLuca family was overextended, politically connected, and dirty as hell. Marcus DeLuca's wife is Linda Chindeluca, Vincent explained, sliding photographs across Antonio's desk. Daughter of Robert Chin, who owns half the import licenses at the Port of Chicago. Sister to David Chun, deputy mayor. Between her family and Marcus's construction business, they've got City Hall wired. Antonio studied the photographs, Marcus DeLuca at a fundraiser, shaking hands with the mayor. Linda Chindeluca at a charity gala, wearing diamonds that could pay Mara's rent for 5 years. Tyler DeLuca in younger photos, always in the center, always smirking. The River North project? Antonio asked. Financed through Lakeside Capital and Midwest Trust. Both banks are nervous. DeLuca's already 3 weeks behind schedule and the pre-sale deposits are being spent faster than they're coming in. If something delays the project further, the banks could call the loans. And the South Loop project. Same story, different banks. He's juggling debt like a circus performer. One missed payment, one permit delay, and the whole house of cards collapses. Antonio tapped Tyler's photograph. Tell me about the son. 22, Northwestern graduate, business degree his daddy paid for. Currently working at DeLuca Development, which means showing up late and taking long lunches. Trust fund kid with no concept of consequences, Vincent paused. He's posted about the crazy diner waitress on 3 different social media platforms. Kid thinks he's untouchable. He thinks his father's money makes him untouchable, Antonio corrected. Let's test that theory. How aggressive do you want to be? Antonio considered. He could crush the DeLucas, he had the connections, the resources, the motivation. But that would be crude. That would be what they expected from someone like him. No, this required finesse. Start small, Antonio said. I want them nervous, not destroyed.
Not yet.
Reach out to the unions working their construction sites. See if we have any friends who might be concerned about safety standards, workplace conditions, that sort of thing. Vincent smiled. Concrete deliveries could get very slow if there are safety concerns. Exactly. And talk to our friends at Lakeside Capital. Remind them that due diligence is important. Maybe they should take another look at DeLuca's financials before extending any additional credit. That'll sting. It's supposed to sting, Antonio said quietly. Tyler DeLuca humiliated my mother and Miss Chun for entertainment. His father raised him to think regular people are beneath him. I'm going to teach them both that everyone matters. Some lessons require pain. Vincent gathered his files. And Miss Chun? Keep watching her. Make sure she's protected, comfortable. She doesn't need to know the details. As Vincent left, Antonio returned to the photographs. His phone showed a saved copy of Tyler's video, the one Vincent had archived before it disappeared. He watched his mother limp through that diner, watched Mara defend her, watched Tyler's entitled smirk. Some people needed to learn that power wasn't about money or connections. It was about knowing when to use both. And against whom. Monday morning at 6:15 a.m., the concrete truck scheduled for DeLuca's River North site never arrived. Site foreman Danny O'Brien called the supplier twice, then 3 times. Each time, he got the same apologetic response. Sorry, Danny. Trucks are having mechanical issues. We'll get them out as soon as possible. How long? Danny demanded. Can't say for sure. Maybe tomorrow? Danny hung up and called Marcus DeLuca directly. We've got 40 guys standing around with their hands in their pockets and no concrete. We're supposed to pour the foundation for Tower B today. Call another supplier, Marcus snapped. Danny tried. Midway Concrete was booked solid for 2 weeks. Lakefront Supply had a mysterious shortage. Chicago Ready Mix didn't even return his calls. By noon, Marcus DeLuca was making calls himself. What do you mean you can't fulfill our order? He barked at the Midway Concrete owner, a man named Ray Kowalski, who he'd been doing business with for 15 years. I mean, we're stretched thin, Marcus. I've got other clients, other commitments. We have a contract. We have a schedule. Ray's voice went carefully neutral. Contracts have force majeure clauses. Equipment failures, union issues, acts of God. Read the fine print. This is bullshit, Ray. This is business. The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone, a cold prickle running down his spine. In 30 years of construction, he'd never had every concrete supplier in Chicago suddenly become unavailable. This wasn't coincidence. Tuesday brought worse news. Marcus sat in his office overlooking Michigan Avenue, his jaw tight as his CFO, Gerald Thornton, explained the situation. Lakeside Capital is requesting additional financial documentation before they'll approve the next loan disbursement, Gerald said, his normally steady voice shaking slightly. They want updated cash flow projections, revised construction timelines, and an independent audit of our reserve funds. We gave them all that last month. They want it again. They're calling it enhanced due diligence. Marcus felt his blood pressure spike. How long will that take? 2 weeks minimum. Maybe 3-inch. We need that money in 4 days, Gerald. We've got subcontractor payments due, material orders, payroll. I know, Gerald removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. And Midwest Trust called this morning. They're requesting similar documentation for the South Loop project. The room went silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Both banks, Marcus said slowly. On the same day. Yes. That's not coincidence. Gerald didn't reply, which was answer enough. Marcus stood and walked to his window. 40 stories below, Chicago moved through its Tuesday rhythm. Taxis, pedestrians, delivery trucks. Somewhere down there, someone was squeezing him. Someone with enough reach to touch his suppliers and his banks simultaneously. He pulled out his phone and called his wife. Linda, I need you to talk to your brother. David? Why? Because someone's screwing with our business, and I need to know who. Linda DeLuca went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was careful. What kind of screwing? Marcus explained about the concrete, the banks, the perfect timing. Linda listened without interrupting, which meant she was thinking. I'll make some calls, she said finally. But Marcus? If this is who I think it is, you need to be very careful. Who do you think it is? Just be careful. I'll call you back. By Wednesday afternoon, the DeLuca offices hummed with barely suppressed panic. The city's Department of Buildings had suddenly decided to conduct a comprehensive review of their South Loop permits. Nothing wrong exactly, just questions. Concerns about environmental impact, traffic patterns, historical preservation in a neighborhood that had no historical buildings. Each question required answers. Each answer required documentation. Each delay cost money they didn't have. It's a stall, Marcus told his legal team. They're freezing us without technically rejecting anything. His head counsel, Patricia Wong, nodded grimly. Someone with serious city connections is making calls. The kind of calls that don't show up in official records. Can we fight it? We can file complaints, but that'll take months. And it might make things worse. Marcus slammed his hand on the conference table. So what do we do? Sit here and bleed money while some invisible enemy tears us apart. Patricia exchanged glances with Gerald. Neither spoke. Marcus's phone buzzed. Linda. He stepped into the hallway. I talked to David, she said without preamble. He made some very quiet inquiries. Marcus, do you remember Tyler posting something last week? Some video from a diner? Marcus's stomach dropped. What? Answer the question. Maybe? Tyler posts stupid stuff all the time.
Why?
Linda's voice went cold. Because that stupid stuff involved mocking an elderly woman with a disability. And that woman was Rosa Russo. The name hit Marcus like a freight train. Oh, Jesus. David says Antonio Russo personally visited that diner the next day. Thanked the waitress Tyler was harassing in the video. Made a very public display of his appreciation. Marcus felt the world tilt. Antonio Russo. The concrete suppliers, the banks, the city permits, it all made horrible sense now. David says Russo owns half the concrete unions in the city, Linda continued. Has friends in every major bank. Has connections in City Hall that go back 40 years. If he wanted to squeeze someone, this is exactly how he'd do it. Over a video? Over some waitress? Over his mother, Marcus. Tyler mocked his mother and put it on the internet. Marcus closed his eyes. In his world, power came from money and political connections. In Russo's world, power came from respect and loyalty. Tyler had disrespected Russo's mother. There was no amount of money or connections that could fix that. What do we do? Marcus asked quietly. I'm working on it. But Marcus? You need to make Tyler understand what he's done. And you need to do it now, before this gets worse. She hung up. Marcus stood in the empty hallway, 40 stories above Chicago, feeling the ground crumble beneath his empire. His son's joke was costing him everything. And somewhere in the city, Antonio Russo was just getting started. Thursday's lunch shift was mercifully slow. Mara had just refilled the coffee for a retired couple at table 3 when the diner's door opened with more force than necessary. The man who entered didn't belong at Betty's diner. He was mid-50s, silver-haired, wearing a navy suit that probably cost 3 months of Mara's rent. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, his briefcase Italian leather, his expression the particular kind of arrogant that came from years of winning arguments. Paul emerged from the kitchen, took one look at the man, and his face went pale. Mr. Harrington, Paul said, his voice unnaturally high. How can I help you? I'm not here for you. The lawyer's eyes swept the diner and landed on Mara. I'm here for Miss Chen. Every customer turned to stare. Mara felt her pulse quicken. Me? Yes, Harrington crossed to her in 3 decisive strides. James Harrington, counsel for the DeLuca family. I need a moment of your time. I'm working. This won't take long. He gestured to an empty booth. Please. It wasn't a request. Mara glanced at Paul, who nodded frantically. She set down her coffee pot and slid into the booth across from Harrington, her hands clasped tight in her lap to keep them from shaking. Harrington opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency and withdrew a single sheet of paper. Miss Chen, I'll be direct. My clients, the DeLuca family, are experiencing significant business difficulties. They believe these difficulties stem from an unfortunate incident involving their son Tyler and an altercation you had with him at this establishment. Altercation. Mara's voice came out sharper than intended. He was mocking an elderly woman. I asked him to stop. Your perspective is noted. Harrington's tone suggested her perspective was worth exactly nothing. However, the subsequent attention this incident has received, particularly involving certain influential parties, has created an untenable situation for my clients. I don't understand what this has to do with me. We're prepared to offer you compensation. Harrington slid the paper across the table. $10,000 in exchange for a public statement. Mara stared at the document. It was some kind of agreement, filled with legal language she couldn't quite parse. What kind of statement? A simple apology. You'll state that you overreacted to a harmless joke, that you escalated the situation unnecessarily, and that the DeLuca family bears no responsibility for any subsequent events. We'll arrange for a small press conference, very brief, very controlled. You read the statement. We compensate you. Everyone moves forward. The words hit Mara like ice water. You want me to apologize for helping someone? We want you to de-escalate a situation that's spiraled beyond reason. Miss Chun, you seem like a sensible young woman. $10,000. That's more than you make in 6 months at this job. I didn't do anything wrong. Harrington's expression hardened. Whether you did or didn't is irrelevant. What matters is that powerful people are using this incident as an excuse to damage my clients. A simple statement from you could end this. Or it could make me a liar. It would make you pragmatic. Harrington leaned forward, his voice dropping. Miss Chun, let me be clear. The DeLuca family has considerable resources and considerable reach. If this situation continues, if their business interests continue to suffer, they will need to explore all available options to protect themselves, including legal action against anyone they perceive as contributing to their damages. The threat was obvious. Mara felt anger rising in her chest, hot and clean. Are you threatening to sue me for being kind to someone? I'm explaining potential consequences. No, Mara stood up. I'm not apologizing for doing the right thing. I don't care how much money you offer, and I don't care how many lawyers you send. That woman needed help. Tyler was cruel. I'd do it again. Harrington's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. Then it's my mistake to make. Miss Chun, you don't understand the forces at play here. I understand perfectly. Mara's voice was steady now, fueled by righteousness. Your client's son acted like a bully, and now your client is facing consequences. That's not my problem. That's yours. She walked away before he could respond, her heart hammering but her head high. Behind the counter, Paul looked like he might have a stroke. Rachel's mouth hung open. Harrington sat in the booth for another moment, then slowly packed his briefcase. As he stood, his eyes swept the diner one more time, and stopped. In the corner booth, partially hidden behind a newspaper, sat a man in his 60s. Dark suit, careful posture, eyes that had seen everything. He wasn't eating, wasn't drinking coffee, just sitting, watching. Their eyes met for half a second. The older man's expression didn't change, but something in his gaze made Harrington look away first. The lawyer left without another word. Vincent Calabrese waited exactly 3 minutes after Harrington's departure before standing. He left a 20 on the table for coffee he hadn't ordered and walked outside to where his car was parked. Inside, he pulled out his phone. It's me, he said when Antonio answered. DeLuca just sent James Harrington to the diner. Offered Miss Chun $10,000 to make a public apology. Said that DeLucas would consider legal action if she didn't cooperate. And she told him to go to hell. Not in those words, but the message was clear. Said she'd do it again. Vincent allowed himself a small smile. Kid's got spine. Antonio was quiet for a moment. Harrington saw you? Made eye contact. He knows someone's watching. Good. Let them know she's protected. Antonio's voice hardened. And, Vincent, increased the pressure. DeLuca tried to intimidate a waitress who makes $9 an hour. I want him to understand exactly how badly he miscalculated. Already have the next moves planned, then execute them. Vincent hung up and started the car. Through the diner window, he could see Mara serving customers, her hands still shaking slightly, but her expression determined. The DeLucas had mistaken her kindness for weakness. It was the kind of error that destroyed empires. And Vincent had a front-row seat to watch it happen. Friday morning, Antonio sat in his office reading Vincent's report on the diner incident. His expression remained calm, but Vincent had known him long enough to recognize the fury beneath the surface. Harrington threatened her with legal action, Antonio said quietly. A waitress making minimum wage. The DeLucas are desperate, Vincent replied. Desperate people make stupid moves. They're about to make another one. Antonio closed the folder and looked at his consigliere. The zoning files. The ones we discussed. Vincent straightened. You want to release them? All of them. Every permit application DeLuca falsified, every bribe to the zoning board, every regulation he ignored. I want it documented, verified, and delivered to someone who will use it. The Tribune has that new investigative reporter, Sarah Chun. She's been digging into South Side development corruption for months. Antonio raised an eyebrow.
Chun?
Related to Linda Chun DeLuca? Distant cousin, actually. Makes it even better. She can't be accused of bias if she's exposing her own family's dirt. Perfect. Give her everything. Property surveys that were falsified for the Pilsen project. Safety inspections that were never conducted. The payments to Richard Kowalski at the zoning board. We have the bank transfers correct. Copies of the checks. Digital transfers. Even a few text messages where Kowalski explicitly discusses payment amounts. Vincent pulled out another folder. There's also the environmental report that DeLuca buried. The River North site has soil contamination that should have required extensive remediation. He just covered it with concrete. Antonio's jaw tightened. People will live in those buildings. He doesn't care. Profit over safety. Always has been. Then we'll make him care. Antonio stood and walked to his window. When you deliver this to Miss Chun at the Tribune, make sure she understands the scope. This isn't just one violation. This is a pattern of corruption spanning 5 years and 8 projects. This is a developer who treats Chicago like his personal playground. She'll run with it. This is career-making material.
Good.
Release it today. Vincent nodded and moved toward the door, but Antonio's voice stopped him. Vincent, make sure our lawyers are ready. When DeLuca figures out where this came from, he'll try to retaliate. I want us legally bulletproof. Already done. Everything we're releasing is documentation they filed with the city. It's public record. We're just making sure the public actually sees it. Sarah Chun received the manila envelope at 2:47 p.m., delivered by courier to the Chicago Tribune building. Inside was a USB drive and a single-type note. A concerned citizen thought you should see this. Sarah had been a journalist for 8 years. She knew an anonymous tip when she saw one. She also knew that anonymous tips were either gold or garbage, with little in between. She plugged the USB into her computer. 2 hours later, she was still reading, her coffee cold, her afternoon meetings forgotten. The files were meticulously organized. Permits, bank records, emails, text messages, photographs. Each document was labeled, cross-referenced, and verified. Someone had spent serious time and money compiling this. And it was devastating. DeLuca Development had systematically falsified safety inspections on the River North project. They'd bribed Richard Kowalski, a 20-year veteran of the zoning board, with payments totaling $340,000 over 3 years. They'd buried an environmental report showing soil contamination that exceeded EPA limits by 400%. Sarah picked up her phone and called her editor. Dan, I need you to look at something.
Now.
The story went live on the Tribune's website at 11:43 p.m. Friday night. The headline read, Corruption and Cover UPS, Inside DeLuca Development's Illegal Building Practices. By Saturday morning, it had been picked up by 6 other news outlets. By noon, the Chicago Department of Buildings had issued a stop work order on all DeLuca projects pending investigation. By 3 p.m., 3 of DeLuca's major investors had requested emergency board meetings. Marcus DeLuca sat in his home office, watching his empire crumble in real time. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Lawyers, investors, board members, all asking the same questions. Is it true? How bad is it? What's our exposure? His wife stood in the doorway, her face pale. Channel 7 just called, Linda said quietly. They want a statement about the environmental violations. Tell them no comment. Marcus, we can't just ignore this. What do you want me to say, Linda? Marcus's voice cracked. That we cut corners? That we paid off inspectors? That I buried a contamination report because remediation would have cost $3 million? Is that what you did? He didn't answer. Linda crossed the room and sat across from him. This is Russo. You know that, right? This is retaliation for Tyler's video. It's not retaliation, it's execution. Marcus gestured at his computer screen, where the Tribune article glowed like an accusation. This information didn't just fall into a reporter's lap. Someone spent months compiling it. Someone with resources and patience and reach. Can we fight it? Fight what? It's all true, Linda. Every word. We can't sue for defamation when they're just reporting facts. We can't claim the documents are fake when I signed half of them myself. Then what do? Marcus looked at his wife, the woman who'd brought him political connections, whose family had helped build his empire, whose brother was deputy mayor. We can't go after Russo directly, he said slowly. He's protected himself legally. This is all public record that mysteriously made its way to a journalist. We can't prove he leaked it, and even if we could, we can't afford a war with him. Not when we're bleeding money and investors. So he wins. He's already won. Marcus's voice was hollow. He's been winning since Tuesday. The concrete, the banks, the permits, we thought we could weather it. But this destroys our reputation. No investor will touch us. No bank will finance us. We're toxic. Linda was quiet for a long moment. The charity banquet is next week. I know. Everyone will be there. The mayor, city council, business leaders. We can't not attend. That would look like an admission of guilt. We also can't attend without addressing this. Marcus rubbed his face. We need to control the narrative somehow. Show we're taking responsibility. Show we're not the villains the Tribune is painting us as.
How?
Marcus thought about the source of all this. Tyler's stupid video. The waitress who'd refused to apologize. Rosa Russo's humiliation. We apologize, he said finally. Publicly. At the banquet. We acknowledge that Tyler behaved badly, that we raised him wrong, that we're taking steps to make amends. Apologize to a waitress? In front of Chicago's elite. It's not about her. It's about showing Russo that we understand. That we're willing to bend. That we know when we're beaten. Marcus met his wife's eyes. Because Linda, we are beaten.
Completely.
The only question now is whether Russo lets us survive, or whether he finishes the job. Linda stood slowly. I'll call David. See if he can broker a meeting with Russo. Quietly. As she left, Marcus returned to his computer screen. The Tribune article had 17,000 shares now. Comments ranged from outrage to schadenfreude. His phone showed 12 missed calls from the board of directors. Somewhere in Chicago, Antonio Russo was watching this unfold. And Marcus DeLuca finally understood what real power looked like. It wasn't money or connections. It was knowing exactly where to push until your enemy broke. Sunday morning, Tyler DeLuca's Instagram went dark. Not just the video of Rosa and Mara, everything. Every post mocking service workers, every story about poor people drama, every caption dripping with entitled contempt.
Gone.
Scrubbed. His account still existed, but it was stripped down to nothing. A profile picture, 0 posts, and a bio that simply read private account. His friends followed suit within hours. Brittany deleted her copies of the video. Chad, who'd shared it to TikTok with the caption, "When NPCs fight back," made his account private. Madison, who'd posted a compilation of the craziest diner confrontations, removed everything dating back 6 months. By noon, the video had been erased from the internet as thoroughly as if it had never existed. Well, almost. Vincent Calabrese still had 17 archived copies, saved across multiple drives and cloud servers. But the DeLuca children didn't know that. Monday morning brought a different kind of reckoning. The DeLuca Development Corporation Board of Directors convened an emergency meeting in their Michigan Avenue conference room. 12 people sat around the table. Investors, financiers, Marcus's business partners, and his wife Linda, representing her family's interests. Marcus hadn't slept in 36 hours. It showed. "Gentlemen, ladies," he began, his voice hoarse. "I want to address the Tribune article directly." "We don't need addresses," interrupted Robert Thornton, who represented the largest investment group. "We need solutions. Our clients are panicking. 3 pension funds have already requested full financial audits before they'll commit additional capital. The South Loop project is frozen," added Patricia Wong, the corporate counsel. "The city won't process a single permit until the investigation concludes. That could take months." "We don't have months," Gerald, the CFO, said quietly. "We have about 3 weeks before we default on the Lakeside Capital loan. Without the next disbursement, we can't make payroll for 400 employees." The room went silent. Robert leaned forward. "Marcus, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need a direct answer. Is the Tribune article accurate?" Marcus looked at the faces around the table, people who trusted him, invested with him, built their own wealth on his projects. "Yes," he said finally. "Most of it." Someone swore. Patricia closed her eyes. "Jesus Christ, Marcus," Robert said. "You buried an environmental report? You bribed a zoning official? For how long?" 3 years. Maybe 4. We cut corners. The margins were tight, the competition was brutal, and the city processes were designed to be slow.
"So we
expedited things." "You broke the law," Patricia said flatly. "Multiple laws. Federal environmental regulations. State ethics laws. Municipal corruption statutes. Marcus, you've exposed this entire company to criminal liability." Linda spoke up, her voice carefully controlled. "The question isn't what was done. It's what we do now. Recriminations don't help us survive the next 3 weeks." "Your wife is right," Robert said. "We need damage control. We need to show investors and the city that we're taking this seriously. That means accountability. That means consequences." "I'll resign," Marcus said. "Effective immediately. We'll bring in new leadership." "That won't be enough," Robert cut him off. "This started with your son's video. That stupid, cruel video that apparently insulted the wrong person. Everyone in this city knows Antonio Russo visited that diner. Everyone knows whose mother Tyler mocked. And everyone knows that this investigation, this perfectly timed, perfectly documented investigation, is retaliation." Marcus said nothing. "So here's what's going to happen," Robert continued. "The charity banquet is Saturday night. Every major player in Chicago will be there. The mayor, city council, the business elite. You're going to attend, and you're going to publicly make this right." "Make what right?" "Everything. You're going to apologize to that waitress. Publicly. In front of everyone who matters. You're going to acknowledge that Tyler behaved badly, that your family takes responsibility, and that you're committed to making amends." "Robert, that's humiliating." "It's survival," Robert's voice was steel. "Right now, Antonio Russo is squeezing us because we disrespected his family. The only way to stop the squeeze is to show respect. To bend. To acknowledge that we were wrong." "We'll look weak," Linda said quietly. "We are weak," Patricia replied. "We're bleeding cash, losing investors, and facing potential criminal charges. Weak is our current reality. The question is whether we want to be weak and alive, or weak and dead." The room fell silent again. Marcus looked around the table, seeing the same conclusion in every face. They were right. His pride had already cost him his reputation and nearly his company. How much more was he willing to lose? "Fine," he said finally. "We'll apologize. Publicly. At the banquet." By Tuesday afternoon, the invitations for the Lakefront Charity Gala had been sent. The event was an annual tradition, Chicago's wealthy gathering to donate money to various causes while networking and displaying their status. This year's gala benefited the Children's Hospital, which made it impossible to skip without looking heartless. Marcus and Linda DeLuca's names were on the guest list as always. So was Mayor Patricia Huang's. So was Deputy Mayor David Chen's. And in a last-minute addition that raised eyebrows throughout the city's social circles, so was Antonio Russo's. The Russo family rarely attended such events. Antonio preferred to operate behind the scenes, exerting influence without seeking the spotlight. His acceptance of this year's invitation sent a clear message. Something significant was going to happen. The whispers started immediately. Chicago's elite loved nothing more than watching powerful people collide. The DeLuca scandal was already the talk of every boardroom and country club. Now, with both families confirmed to attend the same event, the gala had transformed from a charitable obligation into must-see drama. Tickets that normally went unused suddenly became valuable. Reporters requested press credentials. Security was quietly doubled. Wednesday morning, Linda Chindaluca sat in her brother's office in City Hall. "He'll be there," David Chin said, referring to Antonio Russo. "And he expects the apology to be genuine. It will be. Linda, I mean it. No half measures. No lawyer speak. Marcus needs to look that waitress in the eye and apologize like he means it. Tyler needs to be there too, showing remorse." "I know." David leaned back in his chair. "Do you understand what Antonio is doing? This isn't just about respect. It's about power. He's showing the entire city that actions have consequences. That even connected families like ours can be brought to heel if we forget basic decency." "We get it, David. We're humiliated enough."
Good.
"Because if you screw up the apology, if it seems insincere or performative, Antonio won't stop. He'll dismantle everything Marcus has built, and he'll do it slowly enough that everyone can watch." Linda stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. "For what it's worth, David, Tyler was wrong. What he did to that woman, to that waitress, it was cruel. We raised him wrong. This is our fault." David's expression softened slightly. "Then Saturday is your chance to make it right." As Linda left, David picked up his phone and made a call. "Mr. Russo? It's David Chun. They understand. The apology will be genuine." Antonio's reply was brief. "We'll see." The envelope arrived on Thursday afternoon, delivered by a courier in a crisp uniform who made Mara sign for it like it was a legal document. It was thick, cream-colored paper with elegant calligraphy. Inside was an embossed invitation. "You are cordially invited to the annual Lakefront Charity Gala Saturday, October 19th, 7 p.m. the Ritz-Carlton Chicago benefiting Chicago Children's Hospital, black tie optional." Mara stared at it for a full minute, certain there'd been some mistake. She'd never been to a charity gala. She'd barely been inside a hotel that wasn't because she was cleaning it. The closest she'd come to black tie was serving dinner to people wearing tuxedos while she wore a stained apron. There had to be an error. Some administrative mix-up. They'd meant to invite Mara Chin the lawyer, or Mara Chin the doctor. Not Mara Chin the waitress who made $950 an hour plus tips. She was about to throw it away when she noticed a second piece of paper inside the envelope. A simple white note card, handwritten in elegant script. "You stood up alone. Now you won't have to." No signature. No explanation. But Mara knew exactly who'd sent it. "Absolutely not," she told Jenny the next morning at the diner. "I can't go to some fancy gala with Chicago's rich people. That's insane." Jenny was wiping down tables during the pre-lunch lull. "Why not? You got invited." "By a mob boss who feels responsible because his mother was involved in a viral video." "By a man who respects what you did," Jenny corrected. "Mara, when was the last time someone powerful stood up for you? When was the last time you got to dress up and eat fancy food and be treated like you matter?" "I matter right here." "You know what I mean." Jenny set down her rag and looked at Mara seriously. "You've been working 60-hour weeks for 3 years. You live in a crappy apartment, you eat ramen for dinner, and you never do anything nice for yourself. Someone's offering you a night out. A real night out.
Take it.
I don't have anything to wear. So borrow something. I don't know anyone who owns gala clothes. Jenny grinned. Yes, you do. Mrs. Kowalski's daughter is a buyer at Nordstrom. Bet she's got something. Mara opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. The truth was part of her wanted to go. Wanted to see what that world looked like from the inside, as a guest instead of staff. Wanted to walk into a room and not be invisible for once. But another part was terrified. What if I embarrass myself? She said quietly. What if I use the wrong fork or say something stupid? These are people who summer in the Hamptons and winter in Aspen. I buy my clothes at Target. Then you'll be the most real person in the room. Jenny squeezed her shoulder.
Go.
If it's terrible, you leave. But don't miss out because you're scared. Mrs. Kowalski's daughter, Anna, turned out to be a fairy godmother in designer jeans. Mara Chin going to the lakefront gala? Anna squealed when Mrs. Kowalski explained the situation Friday evening. Oh my God, I have the perfect dress. Wait here. She disappeared into her childhood bedroom, now apparently a closet for clothes that didn't fit in her downtown apartment, and emerged with a garment bag. Inside was a dress that made Mara's breath catch. It was midnight blue, simple but elegant. Not too flashy, not too plain. A modest neckline, 3/4 sleeves, a fitted waist that flowed into a knee-length skirt. The fabric felt expensive, with a subtle sheen that caught the light. It's from last season, Anna explained, so I can't return it, but I only wore it once. Try it on. Mara changed in the bathroom, half expecting it not to fit. But when she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The dress fit perfectly, making her look sophisticated. Professional, like someone who belonged at a charity gala. Oh, honey, Mrs. Kowalski said when Mara emerged. You look beautiful. Anna nodded approvingly. You need shoes. What size are you? 7.5. Perfect. Same as me. Anna disappeared again and returned with simple black heels. Not too high, elegant without being ostentatious. And you'll need a clutch. She handed Mara a small black purse.
Keep it.
Early Christmas present. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. I can't accept all this. You can and you will, Mrs. Kowalski said firmly. Anna has a closet full of fancy clothes. You have one night to feel fancy. This is what neighbors do. Saturday morning, Mara woke up with butterflies in her stomach. She had the dress, the shoes, the clutch. Anna had even given her makeup tips and YouTube tutorial links. Everything was ready. Except her nerves. She read the note again. You stood up alone. Now you won't have to. Antonio Russo had arranged this. Had made sure she'd be there, would be protected, would be visible.
But why?
Was it really just gratitude? Or was there something else happening, something bigger that she was being pulled into without fully understanding? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A car will pick you up at 6:30 p.m. You're safe. Vincent, probably. The man she'd seen watching at the diner after the lawyer had left. Mara sat on her couch, holding her phone, feeling the weight of the decision. She could stay home, watch Netflix, eat leftover Chinese food, stay safe in her small, predictable life. Or she could get dressed up, get in the car, and walk into a room full of people who normally wouldn't notice she existed. People who'd have to notice her now. Because Antonio Russo had decided she mattered. Mara looked at the dress hanging on her closet door, elegant and waiting. She thought about Rosa Russo, limping through that diner while people laughed. She thought about Tyler DeLuca's smirk, about standing up when no one else would, about doing the right thing even when it cost her. She'd stood up alone then. Tonight, she wouldn't have to. Mara picked up her phone and texted back, I'll be ready. At 6:30 p.m., a Blacktown car pulled up outside her building. The driver, an older gentleman in a neat suit, opened the door for her with a respectful nod. Miss Jen? Mr. Russo sends his regards. Mara took a deep breath, smoothed her borrowed dress, and stepped into the car. Chicago's glittering skyline spread before her as they drove toward the Ritz-Carlton. Somewhere in that city, the DeLuca family was preparing for the most humiliating night of their lives. And Mara was about to have a front-row seat. The Ritz-Carlton's grand ballroom was a palace of glass and gold. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks, casting prismatic light across tables draped in white silk. Ice sculptures melted slowly at the bar. A string quartet played something classical and expensive. Everywhere Mara looked, she saw wealth, designer gowns, diamond earrings, watches that cost more than cars. She'd never felt more out of place in her life. Miss Chun. A woman in an elegant black dress approached with a clipboard. Right this way, please. Mara followed her through the crowd, acutely aware of eyes tracking her movement. People whispered, pointed. Word had clearly spread about who she was and why she was here. The hostess led her to a table near the front, not the very front where the mayor and city officials sat, but close enough to matter. The place card read Mara Chun in the same elegant calligraphy as the invitation. Mr. Russo wanted to ensure you had a good view, the hostess said with a knowing smile before disappearing. Mara sat carefully, smoothing her borrowed dress. The other seats at her table were empty. She was alone in a room full of hundreds. Then a voice behind her. Miss Chun, you look lovely. She turned to find Vincent Calabrese, the man from the diner. Up close, he looked like somebody's grandfather, kind eyes, a warm smile, except for the steel underneath. Mr. Calabrese. Vincent, please, he sat beside her. Mr. Russo asked me to keep you company. Make sure you're comfortable. I'm not sure comfortable is possible here. Vincent chuckled. Fair enough. But you belong here more than half these people. They inherited their seats. You earned yours. Before Mara could respond, the lights dimmed slightly. A hush fell over the ballroom. Antonio Russo had entered. He moved through the crowd like a ship cutting through water. People parted instinctively, offering greetings he acknowledged with minimal nods. His dark suit was impeccable, his presence magnetic. He didn't seek attention, but commanded it anyway. Their eyes met across the room. Antonio inclined his head slightly, acknowledgement, respect, and continued to his table near the mayor's. He doesn't usually come to these things, Vincent murmured. His presence tonight is significant. Mara understood. Antonio was here to watch, to ensure compliance, to remind everyone in this room who held real power. The mayor spoke first, welcoming everyone, thanking them for supporting the children's hospital. Standard charity gala fare. Then came the auction, artwork, vacation packages, dinner with celebrities that raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in minutes. Finally, as dessert was being served, the mayor returned to the microphone. Before we conclude this evening, the DeLuca family is asked for a moment to address a personal matter. The room went silent. This wasn't on the program. Marcus DeLuca stood, his wife Linda beside him. They looked diminished somehow, not physically, but in presence. The confidence that usually radiated from wealthy developers had evaporated. They were followed by Tyler, whose face was pale and whose swagger had completely disappeared. Marcus took the microphone with shaking hands. Thank you, Mayor Huang. He paused, gathering himself. My family owes someone an apology, a public apology. Recently, my son Tyler behaved in a manner that was cruel, thoughtless, and inexcusable. The whispers started. Camera phones appeared. He mocked an elderly woman in a diner because she walked with a limp. He filmed it, posted it online, made entertainment out of someone's struggle. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. The elderly woman was Rosa Russo, mother of Antonio Russo, and the young woman who defended her, who stood up when no one else would, was Mara Chun. Every head in the ballroom turned toward Mara's table. She felt her face flush hot, her heart hammering. Vincent touched her arm gently. Steady, he whispered. Marcus continued. Miss Chun risked her job, accepted ridicule, and showed basic human decency. My son showed the opposite. He looked directly at Mara now, across the 100 feet of ballroom. I raised him to think his family's wealth and connections put him above basic respect for others. I was wrong. We were wrong. Tyler stepped forward, clearly coached but genuinely uncomfortable. Miss Chun, I'm sorry. What I did was terrible. You were right to call me out.
I'm
sorry. It was clumsy. Uncomfortable. But something in Tyler's eyes suggested actual shame. Linda spoke next, her voice steadier. We've established a scholarship in Miss Chen's name at Northwestern University for students from working-class backgrounds pursuing hospitality careers. It's a small gesture, but we hope it demonstrates our commitment to doing better. The room remained silent, suspended between awkwardness and fascination. Miss Chun, Marcus said, if you're willing to accept our apology, we would consider it a grace we don't deserve. All eyes turned to Mara. She stood slowly, her legs unsteady. Across the room, she could see Antonio watching, his expression unreadable. Vincent gave her the smallest encouraging nod. Mara had two choices, graciously accept and end their humiliation, or reject it and prolong their suffering. She thought about Rosa, about dignity, about what actually mattered. I accept your apology, she said, her voice carrying in the silent ballroom. But I hope you understand, I didn't defend Mrs. Russo for recognition or reward. I did it because it was right. Everyone deserves to be treated with basic respect, regardless of their age, their wealth, or their status. She looked directly at Tyler. I hope you've learned that. Really learned it. Tyler nodded, his face flushed. Thank you, Marcus said quietly, and the family returned to their seats. The applause that followed was polite but uncertain. Everyone in the room understood what they'd witnessed wasn't magnanimity, it was power. The DeLucas hadn't wanted to apologize. They'd been forced to. And Antonio Russo had orchestrated every moment. As the gala wound down, guests approached Mara's table, not to mock, but to introduce themselves. Business cards were offered. Compliments were paid. The woman who'd been invisible that morning was suddenly visible in a way that couldn't be undone. When the evening finally ended, Vincent walked Mara to her car. You handled that beautifully, he said. Was it real? Mara asked. The apology. Does it matter? They said the words. They humbled themselves publicly. Tyler deleted his video. And you got a scholarship established in your name, Vincent smiled. Sometimes justice doesn't look the way we expect. As the town car pulled away, Mara looked back at the Ritz-Carlton. Through the windows, she could see Antonio Russo speaking with the mayor, his posture relaxed, his point made without ever saying a word. He'd moved an empire to defend his mother's dignity. And in the process, he'd changed Mara's life forever. Monday morning felt different the moment Mara walked through Betty's diner doors. She debated calling in sick, not ready to face the questions and stares she knew were coming. The gala had been Saturday night. By Sunday morning, 3 different news outlets had run stories. Waitress receives public apology from DeLuca family. Viral video ends in charity gala confrontation. Antonio Russo brokers peace between developer dynasty and service worker. Her face was in every article. Her name was everywhere. But rent didn't pay itself, and hiding felt like cowardice. So at 5:45 a.m., Mara pushed through the diner's door, ready for whatever came next. What came next was silence. Every staff member in the pre-opening prep stopped and stared. Rachel at the hostess stand, Jerry in the kitchen, Jenny at the coffee station. Even Paul, who'd been counting register money, looked up. Then Jenny started clapping. Within seconds, the entire staff joined in, not mockingly but genuinely. Jerry hooped from the kitchen. Rachel grinned. Our girl made the DeLucas bow down, Jenny announced, crossing the room to hug Mara. Do you know how many people have been trying to humble that family for years? And you did it by just being decent. I didn't do anything, Mara protested, her face burning. I just accepted an apology. You did everything, Rachel corrected. You stood up when nobody else would. And now look, scholarship in your name, public apology, The whole city talking about basic respect and dignity. She shook her head admiringly. Girl, you made history. Paul approached slowly, and Mara braced herself. He'd never liked her, never appreciated her politics or her tendency to speak up. But his expression now wasn't hostile. It was almost respectful. Miss Chun, he said formally, I owe you an apology. I should have backed you up when those kids were harassing that customer. Instead, I worried about the wrong things.
I'm sorry.
Mara blinked in surprise. Paul. Mr. Calabrese visited me last week. Paul continued, his voice lower. Explained that Betty's has new ownership. Explained that the new owners value employees who treat customers with dignity. Explained that managers who don't support such employees might find themselves looking for new positions. Oh. So, Paul straightened. New policy. Any customer who harasses staff or other customers gets one warning, then they're asked to leave. No exceptions. Not even if their daddy owns half the city. Jenny snorted. Should have been the policy all along. Yes, Paul agreed quietly. It should have. He returned to the register, leaving Mara standing there, processing what had just happened. Betty's diner, the place where she'd been the butt of jokes, where she'd been told to keep her head down and her politics to herself, had just changed its entire culture. Because Antonio Russo now owned it. Because he was protecting her. The breakfast rush started at 7, and Mara quickly realized the customers had changed too. Not the customers themselves, same construction workers, same nurses, same regulars, but how they treated her. Nobody snapped fingers. Nobody was rude. Several people recognized her from the news and offered quiet congratulations. That took guts, a nurse named Patricia said while Mara refilled her coffee. Standing up to those rich kids. My daughter's in college with kids like that. They think they own the world. I just helped someone who needed help, Mara replied, the same response she'd given a dozen times already.
Exactly.
And most people wouldn't have. Patricia left a $20 tip on a $12 check. It kept happening. Bigger tips. Friendlier customers. People treating her like she mattered, like her time had value. One businessman actually apologized for making her wait while he finished a phone call before ordering. By noon, Mara had made more in tips than she usually made in a full day. Jenny noticed too. Girl, you're printing money over there. Table 6 left you $30 on a burger and fries. It's weird, Mara said, uncomfortable. I'm the same person I was last week. Yeah, but now they see you, Jenny replied. Before, you were invisible. Just the waitress, now you're the woman who stood up to the DeLucas, now you're real to them. I was always real.
To you, sure. To them.
Jenny shrugged. People don't see service workers, Mara. We're like furniture. But you got noticed. And now they can't unsee you. By Wednesday, the rumors had spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. That's her. Mara heard someone whisper at the coffee shop where she stopped after her shift. The one Antonio Russo's mother talked about. I heard he personally threatened the DeLucas, another voice said. Told them if they didn't apologize, he'd destroy their entire company. He basically did destroy it. You see the Tribune article? They're facing criminal charges. Couldn't have happened to a nicer family. Mara kept her head down, paid for her coffee, and left quickly. But the whispers followed her everywhere now. At the grocery store. At the laundromat. On her own block. You're famous, Mrs. Kowalski said when Mara got home. My bridge club spent an hour talking about you. Half of them want to know if you're dating Mr. Russo.
What? No.
He was grateful I helped his mother. Mrs. Kowalski's smile suggested she didn't believe a word. Well, grateful or not, you've got a powerful friend now. That means something in this city.
It did mean something.
Mara was starting to understand that. Doors that had been closed were suddenly opening. A manager from an upscale restaurant on the Magnificent Mile had called, offering her a position with double her current salary. A local news station wanted to interview her about kindness in the service industry. She'd turned them all down. Because despite everything, the gala, the apology, the attention, Mara was still the same person who'd helped an elderly woman find a seat. She didn't want fame. She didn't want to be a symbol or a story. She just wanted to do her job with dignity and go home at the end of the day. But the city had other plans. Thursday afternoon, during the lunch rush, a black SUV pulled up outside Betty's diner. Mara's heart jumped. She recognized that vehicle. The door opened, and Antonio Russo stepped out, alone this time. No bodyguards. No entourage. Just a man in an expensive suit walking into a diner for lunch. The entire restaurant went quiet. Antonio surveyed the room calmly, then his eyes found Mara. "Miss Chun," he said pleasantly, "is my usual table available?" Mara realized she was holding her breath. "Your usual table? Corner booth. If it's not too much trouble." "Of course. Right this way." As she led him across the diner, every eye followed. Paul looked like he might faint. Jenny gave Mara a subtle thumbs up. Antonio sat, accepted a menu he clearly didn't need, and ordered simply, coffee, eggs, toast. "You handled Saturday beautifully," he said when she returned with the coffee. "My mother was very pleased to see justice served. How is Mrs. Russo?"
"Well."
"She asks about you often. Says she knew you were special the moment you helped her." Antonio's smile was genuine. "She has good instincts about people. I'm glad she's well." "We both are. And, Miss Chun." Antonio's voice dropped slightly. "If you ever need anything at all, you call Vincent. Understood?" It wasn't a request. It was a promise. "Understood," Mara said softly. Antonio nodded and returned to his coffee, dismissing her gently. Mara went back to work, feeling the weight of every stare in the diner. The message was clear. Mara Chun was under Antonio Russo's protection. And in Chicago, that changed everything. 3 months later, Mara's life looked remarkably the same. She still worked at Betty's diner 5 days a week. Still lived in her Pilsen walk-up. Still bought groceries on sale and saved her tips in a coffee can. The scholarship established in her name had gone to a 19-year-old kid from Englewood who wanted to study hospitality management. Mara had met him once, awkwardly, and told him to work hard and be kind. That was all she knew how to say. But everything was different too. Every Tuesday at 10 a.m., Antonio Russo stopped by for coffee. He never announced himself, never brought an entourage. Just walked in quietly, sat in the corner booth, and ordered the same thing. Black coffee, scrambled eggs, wheat toast. He read the Tribune, made occasional phone calls in Italian, and left a reasonable tip, 20%, nothing ostentatious. He treated Mara exactly like she was a waitress doing her job. And somehow, that meant more than any grand gesture could have. "Your usual, Mr. Russo?" Mara would ask, even though she already knew. "Please, Miss Chun. And how are you today?" Small talk. Normal conversation. As if he hadn't destroyed a real estate empire to defend his mother's honor. As if he wasn't one of the most powerful men in Chicago. The other customers watched these interactions with fascination. But Antonio's demeanor made it clear. Mara wasn't his property or his project. She was simply someone he respected. Someone under his quiet protection. That protection, Mara learned, was more powerful than she'd imagined. The upscale restaurant that had offered her a job? They'd increased the offer twice, even after she declined. The landlord who'd been threatening rent increases? Suddenly decided her building didn't need any changes after all. The drunk customer who'd gotten aggressive one night? Left after one phone call from Paul, muttering about not wanting trouble. Mara never asked for these interventions. They just happened. Quietly. Efficiently. "It's like having a guardian angel," Jenny said one afternoon. "Except your guardian angel can make people disappear." "He doesn't make people disappear," Mara protested. "Metaphorically disappear. The DeLucas, for example. When's the last time you saw Tyler at a restaurant? They moved to Arizona. Whole family. Marcus sold what was left of the company and left town." Mara had heard. The Tribune had covered it. DeLuca Development Corporation dissolved after pleading guilty to multiple violations. Marcus avoided prison through a plea deal, but his reputation was destroyed. Linda's family had distanced themselves. Tyler was reportedly actually working at a construction company in Phoenix, learning the business from the ground up. Justice had been served. Not perfect, but real. One Tuesday in late January, Rosa Russo came to the diner. Mara was refilling coffee when she saw the familiar figure being helped through the door by Antonio. Rosa still walked with a limp, still carried her elegant cane, but her smile was bright. "Mrs. Russo." Mara set down the coffee pot and hurried over. "It's so good to see you." "Mara, dear," Rosa embraced her warmly. "My son tells me you refuse every gift we try to send. Is this true?" Mara's face flushed. "I don't need gifts. I was just being decent." "Decency is the rarest gift of all," Rosa patted her cheek. "But I insist."
Come to dinner this Sunday.
"Family dinner. I make braciole that will change your life." "I couldn't impose." "It's not an imposition if you're invited," Antonio said quietly. "My mother's been asking for 3 months. Please, for her sake." How could Mara refuse? That Sunday, she sat at a table with the Russo family, Antonio, Rosa, Antonio's 2 brothers and their wives, various nieces and nephews, and ate the best meal of her life. They treated her like family, told stories,
Laughed.
Rosa held her hand and said, "You have good heart. This is what matters." It became a monthly tradition. Dinner with the Russos. Not because Mara was special or owed, but because Rosa liked her. Because kindness had built a bridge between 2 very different worlds. Spring came to Chicago, and Mara walked to work through neighborhoods that felt different now. People nodded to her on the street. Shop owners greeted her by name. She wasn't famous, the news cycle had moved on, but she was known. Respected. The woman who'd stood up when others stayed silent. The woman Antonio Russo had defended. One morning, a young waitress at another diner stopped her. "Miss Chin, I just wanted to say thank you. Since your story got out, customers have been nicer. Like they remember we're human. It's made a difference." Mara smiled. "Just keep being kind. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." That afternoon, Antonio came for his usual coffee. As Mara poured, he said quietly, "My mother wanted you to know something. She says you reminded her why we came to this country. Why we work so hard. Not for money or power. For dignity. For the right to be treated with respect regardless of who we are." "I'm glad," Mara said simply. Antonio nodded and returned to his paper. Mara went back to work, refilling coffee, taking orders, treating every customer with the same respect she'd shown Rosa that day. Because that's what mattered. Not the gala or the apology or the protection of powerful men. Just the daily choice to see people as people. To stand up when others stayed silent. To offer kindness in a world that often forgot its value. Her small act hadn't just protected a stranger. It had shifted something fundamental, proving that decency still mattered, that loyalty could move mountains, and that sometimes the most powerful thing in the world was simply treating someone with respect when they needed it most. In a city built on power and money and connections, Mara Chun had done something revolutionary. She'd been kind. And Chicago would never forget it.